A few months ago, I felt a gentle nudge from the Lord to study the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel. At the time, I wasn't entirely sure why, but I chose to follow that prompting. Chapter by chapter, as time allowed, I immersed myself in the stories, the triumphs, the failures, and the lessons hidden within the pages. Around the same time, my husband and I began watching House of David. It was beautiful to see how thoughtfully the series brought scripture to life, making ancient stories feel relatable and deeply human. As I watched Saul's journey unfold, I couldn't help but see the tragedy of a man who started well but gradually became consumed by power. The more he sought to protect his position, the more he lost himself. Anyone or anything that threatened his throne became an enemy, even those closest to him. It was a sobering reminder of how unchecked pride can distort the heart. But as I continued studying Samuel, I realized these stories were not merely about Saul or David, they were holding up a mirror. One lesson became impossible to ignore. I must deal with any trace of pride within me. Pride serves no good purpose. Left unchecked, it quietly grows, bringing confusion, division, and destruction in its wake. Saul's life stands as a solemn testimony to that truth. Another lesson that settled deeply into my spirit was the call to trust God completely, not partially, not when it feels convenient, completely. How often do we rely on our own abilities, our own plans, our own resources? David himself learned this lesson in a painful way. In 2 Samuel 24, he placed confidence in the size of his army rather than in the God who had given him every victory. God's economy has never depended on numbers. What he desires is trust, obedience, and faithfulness. Perhaps one of the most profound lessons was recognizing that our choices rarely affect only ourselves. Every action sends ripples through the lives of those connected to us. David experienced God's forgiveness, yet he still walked through the consequences of some of his decisions. His story reminds us that grace and consequences can coexist. So before we act, before we speak, before we make decisions in moments of frustration,